place in the World Cup.
For us.
He scored! Australia have done it!
Yes, hello and welcome to the Fox Football Podcast. I'm Adam Peacock. Great to have the company of James Dodd again to chat some football. How are you, mate?
Very good, mate. Very good. Following on from our Adelaide United cat theme last night, as you would have seen just before we started recording this, I've been pestered by one of my cats this morning. Fancied sitting in on the podcast. So, very cat themed.
Hang on, one of?
Yeah, we've got two. Yeah, that's the young one. So we adopted both of them. We've got one old one and one young one.
Oh, that's nice of you to adopt an animal in need, but I just don't trust cats. I couldn't do it. Is there trust issues? You don't have a problem with that?
No, they're fine. The younger one's a little bit of a shit. The older one's great. He just does what he wants. Give him food and he's your best mate.
Fair enough. It was a wild night in Adelaide last night. You were watching on the box. I was calling as well. Some unexpected things happened right from the get-go. I don't know if you've ever seen a kit for a home team that is paying tribute to an icon of the city, a monument, and that monument being the Mall's Balls, which is apparently the place I had it explained to me yesterday. I'd seen them in Rundle Mall, and Rundle Mall is an iconic area of Adelaide. That's where people meet. Before mobile phones, you'd just say to your mates, hey, I'll meet you at the Mall's Balls at 2:00. And it was just the meeting point. You just wonder how many relationships, how many marriages have started with the first date upon meeting at the Mall's Balls. It's very Adelaide.
Yeah, it is very Adelaide. It would remind me of an English version of like Millwall having the Waterloo clock in Waterloo Station on their shirts, because that's where everyone used to meet in the station. There used to be loads of like first blind dates that would be there. So I'll meet you under the big clock in Waterloo Station. Very famous landmark. But yeah, I can't imagine Millwall having it on their shirt.
Oh man, outstanding. It was a good night in Adelaide. I mean, the ridiculous happened on the pitch with the cat. Obviously, that was amusing. The poor cat. Hopefully, it's okay. But two of the most outrageous pieces of skill I think I've seen in the A-League this season. Firstly, Ben Halloran and his goal. And thankfully it stood. Unfortunately, it took 3.5 minutes to find out if it stood, and that's simply not good enough. But also Alassane Toure. And to do what he did, and it wasn't as if he did it to a kid playing his third game of professional football. It was Benyat, who was left grasping at air, the guy who's played over 500 professional league matches all around the world, primarily in Spain, and played for Spain, is one of the biggest names to come through the system over there at a time, was just remarkable.
Benyat is probably thinking, you little so-and-so, I left Lionel Messi in La Liga to get away from this. And then he's got Alassane Toure doing it. And do you know what it reminded me of? I think I tweeted it was pure filth. Like, you shouldn't do those things. It's embarrassing to senior players to have that done to them. But it reminded me of, you don't only see those videos pop up on social media every so often of like street freestylers.
Yeah.
And they're playing and they've got the mini goals, and they're basically their brief is they have to try and nutmeg someone. And that person has their legs closed the whole time, deliberately not trying to get nutmeg. That's what it reminded me of. He was just probing and waiting. He had those players and the ball on a string. It was fantastic to watch. And it was fantastic from Adelaide as well, because I did wonder, that when MacArthur equalised, I thought Adelaide have probably had the better of the game here, but it's good signs from them. And to bounce back from the results they've had recently, that's really impressive from them.
All in front of a Adelaide legend, Johnny Hazeman. Did you notice him? I put something up on Twitter, on Instagram actually, of Johnny. He's the guy who was in the gold sequined baggy pants, gumboots, and the Mall's Balls kit. So I had it explained to me that Johnny is a bit of a irreverent figure, not irrelevant, irreverent, two totally different meanings, in Adelaide, that he just strides. You see him randomly down the Rundle Mall, just wearing like a fishnet singlet with loud pants, and just off in his own little space, not hurting anyone, loving life his way. And they got into the game because of the Rundle Mall connection last night. So maybe they were showing off for Johnny, because he did the coin toss as well before the game. Yeah. So there's this picture of the refs, Stephen Lucas, one of the nicest blokes going around with a big smile on his face. Stephen Mork, all pumped for the game. Mark Milligan standing there with a look on his face as if to say, what on earth is going on here? and Johnny standing in his sequin gold pants, gumboots, and Maul's Balls kit with a big smile on his face. One of the greatest images in the history of the A-League.
That's football. And the picture I love, the one that you put up, is the woman next to him. I don't know what was going on there, why she didn't want her photo taken.
I didn't know who she was. There was another blonde, attractive woman next to her as well. And Johnny was sitting there pre-game, waiting to go out to do the toss on one of the Bunnings chairs. Big smile on his face, as he always does. He had her for company and her friend for company as well. It was just a superb night. And of course, it ended in a 3-1 win for Adelaide, which puts them second. And MacArthur leaves them a little bit vulnerable. They've got enough time, but they've played the more games than the others in the top six. So it's up to you. Big game this Friday night, Brisbane. If they win this, and you'd be a brave human being to say that they can't, given the way that they dealt with MacArthur last week, they can really close the gap to Western Sydney above them with games in hand.
Yeah, it's interesting because if you look at, I listened to Matt Derbyshire after the game, and there was essentially, it's always not difficult interviewing players when they've just been beaten, but trying to elicit a good answer from them about what this means in context. And he was very interesting. He said, listen, we have to bounce back from this. We've got 9 games. It's almost as if they all know that they're counting down the games they've got left because they know how tight it is. Often in these sorts of, top 6 qualification races, if you like, there will always be a couple of standout runaway teams, and there'll be, say, 3 or 4 teams that are competing for 2 spaces. That's really not the case this year. There are so many teams that are so bunched and so tight. And as you said about Brisbane, I think they've played 3 games fewer than Western Sydney, and they're only 5 points behind. So going into that game on Friday night, it is so confusing, and I guess so... the word I suppose I'm looking for is it's so unsettling if you're a coach, because I heard Carl Robinson in his press conference earlier this week. He was asked about it and he spoke and he said, listen, it's so crazy. It's so up in the air at the moment. The cliche answer is to say we can only focus on ourselves, but it's genuinely true because we can't control what anybody else does because everybody's on a different amount of games played. And it just means that going into this match, everybody is watching it for a different team perspective going, cool, we need a draw here. We need a win there. We need a win for Brisbane. We need a win for the Wanderers. And it makes it so exciting.
Yeah, exactly. You got Perth, Wellington, Western United, Brisbane. So Brisbane and Western United on 20, Wellington on 18, Perth on 18. Perth have only played 15 as well. They got a run of 5 home games in a row. And if they get Castro back, you'd be an idiot to suggest that they're out of the equation. Wellington, maybe their games played. They've dropped too many games, which they should have got something out of, is going to really hurt them in the end. Western United only played 14. Brisbane only played 14. And MacArthur and Western Sydney, the vulnerable ones in that top 6, 5th and 6th on 26 and 25 respectively, played 17. So it's an absolute mess, a beautiful mess. It's great.
Yeah. And what did you think of MacArthur's performance in general last night, Ed?
Not good enough in terms of trying to link up with Derbyshire, who's obviously a great striker, and he just didn't have enough opportunities to really cause a bit of havoc. He is so good because he occupies both centre backs at once with his movement, his intelligent movement, and his aerial threat as well. And he's good across the ground, but they couldn't get the ball enough to him. They really missed Sushayeta, and we didn't really see what he could provide because when he came on minutes later, the Halloran goal happened in the 3.5 minute, and it kind of knocked the stuffing out of the game after that. You kind of realised it was over. But they couldn't link up with him. I was surprised they took off Holman because he was the most direct runner. Maybe they saw something with his stats. It's interesting with MacArthur. They actually have someone on the ground behind them with the GPS data, live GPS data going into the iPad. And as soon as they hit a certain threshold, the person holding the iPad says he's done, he's cooked, and they get him off, whoever it is. I was sitting there one game against Sydney and Susaeta hit redlined and they got him off straight away, even though he was so influential in the game. So maybe they based that decision on Holman on that. We don't know. But yeah, it wasn't as fluent as it needed to be against the side who are so good at home and have won 19 of 24 points at home, Adelaide, this season. It's a remarkable effort.
Yeah, I thought that, interesting with Holman. We all saw the pass that he put through was one of the passes of the season to set up Derbyshire for that goal. It's interesting you talk about Matt Derbyshire because I was going to come on to his opposite number, if you like, in that game, Tommy Urich. And it was it was a strange performance from him last season, and I'm not last night, sorry, and I'm not entirely sure if you were to look at his numbers, for example, on the the GPS and where he's at on a fitness percentage of just where he is, because he had moments of really, really intelligent play last night, but there were a couple of moments where Carl Viet must have been pulling his hair out, because he got sent through one-on-one, and it made a real mess of the effort to try and dink it over Adam Federici. There was another one where he was caught on his heels, just before that, I think, when the ball got flashed across the face of goal, and any striker in that position would gobble that up as an easy chance. And I just wonder how much of their potential to challenge to be Premier's Plate winners and ultimately, champions rests on just how much they can get out of Tommy Juric and when they can get him firing at full speed.
Well, I reckon if they get enough out of him, they've got Yengi and also Al Hassan Toure there. So they've got real depth in that position if everyone's fit. They've got a problem with their hamstring injuries. There was actually a meeting late last week with the Adelaide crew to work out why on earth so many players are experiencing soft tissue injuries, especially in the upper legs. So, yeah, if they keep everyone fit, they're an absolute threat, Adelaide, because the balance that they've now got with one day in the squad, he just doesn't do dumb things with the football. So that takes care of that, and that was what they were missing, that spine. Now they've certainly got it. They're going to be a real danger. Hey, what did you make of the story early in the week? The league leaders, Manchester, Central Coast Mariners, and the links to Manchester United, one of the biggest clubs in the world. I can't imagine that Manchester United would have been over the moon that this leaks into the press, given that non-disclosure agreements are the thing when takeovers happen. What did you make of it all?
It's interesting you say that, because not being over the moon, I can just imagine that when this was first mooted and when they maybe talks, we assume they've had some discussions, started beginning, I can imagine everybody at the Central Coast Mariners was so excited. It was just impossible to keep this under their hat. They were like giddy that Manchester United were involved. So I can just picture in my mind of them going, we can't tell anyone. We can't tell anyone. Who is it? Man United. But it's hard because, for Manchester United, it would be a drop in the ocean. They've obviously recognised that, like we saw with Melbourne City, and becoming part of the City Football Group, and the minimal outlay that was there can be justified by one transfer down the line. Aaron Moy, for example, coming to the English leagues. I think they've probably looked at Central Coast Mariners, and I have it on very good authority that Manchester United have been looking at Australia. I know that for a fact. They've been looking at market research. They've been looking at teams. They're obviously looking at the way that the City Football Group are operating. They've now got teams they've got one in South America. They've got Girona that they're a part of. They've got a Belgian side. They've got a French team, Yokohama, Mumbai City FC. They're really trying to make a global empire. And I think Manchester United, maybe because they knew that their financials would see them slip out of that top 3 on the Forbes list, they're now looking to try and expand themselves as a similar entity.
So they are. It's not pie in the sky stuff. They actually are, because I one of the first things I thought of when I saw it, I said, is this really part of Manchester United's business model? Is this what they want to do? Because they've been so successful in just having Manchester United as the brand and carrying that throughout the world, not worrying about having other teams in other markets, but that they're maybe twisting here.
So from what I understand, they've been doing their research. They've explored Australia in the past, which I assume would lead to this, to them sussing things out. Whether or not it does happen, I don't know. I've got no idea, in all honesty. But the fact that they have been doing it would make you think that they're not going to. And this brings me on to my next point. This maybe gives me a bit of hope, for example, that they're not going to rip the club away from where it is and dump it somewhere else and create, Manchester FC or something like that. It would make me think that, like they used to do with, I think it was, the name escapes me. They used to have a Belgian team that they were affiliated with, and they would Royal Antwerp. That was it.
No, it wasn't Antwerp. It was Royal Antwerp. Yeah, all their players went there on loan.
Yeah, they did. And I wonder whether or not they're going to do something similar here, whereas maybe they don't actually end up buying it. The Mariners, maybe they have them as a feeder operation. They have their first option on all the talented young players that come through. Maybe that's the way they do it, and then they have a tie-up, and they can bring Manchester United over here every so often to do games. They can have a coaching tie-up in that the likes of Mike Phelan would play a part in that, as he was sporting director at the Mariners. You know, they could look at pathways and things like that. Because, you know, I saw the uproar on social media this week about ripping a club from its heartland and completely changing it. Let's be honest, if Manchester United were to buy the Central Coast Mariners for a footing in Australia, they want that. They want that club in Melbourne or in Sydney, don't they? They don't want it in, with the best due respect, in Newcastle or Gosford, for example.
Yeah, satellite city. The problem with that is that in Sydney FC and Western Sydney would just not stand for the another club moving to their backyard, and it's the APL who run things. They just wouldn't let it happen, I reckon. Also, the fact that the reports were to move it to the northern suburbs of Sydney. That's where I live. It wouldn't work. I'm telling you now, it wouldn't be that different crowd-wise to getting what they get up at Marineville up there on the Central Coast in Gosford. That's a richer area in terms of trying to grow and get a strong base. And what is a strong base? What do they what's the end game? Do they want to end up with a club that's going to get 40,000 to a game? Well, that's going to take 40 years if you want to do that and move it to Sydney. Do they want to make it a club where they're going to get 10,000 to every home game and make it a really enjoyable experience? You can do that in Gosford. Are you going to be worried about not getting the best kids? No, because kids in Australia, there's enough of them who just want an opportunity. They'll go anywhere. If you make the academy good enough, which is what Nick Montgomery is doing and the crew up there at Central Coast, that they're really improving it, and they're getting the right players through. They're kind of cherry picking, or not cherry picking. They're trying to get kids 17, 18 and also develop their own from that area coming through. So you're going to get both. I can't see the point in moving the club. Commercially, yeah, you can make that argument, but would a business in Sydney still want to be involved in a club which is tied to Manchester United, even though it's the fact that it's only an hour away? I reckon they would, if it was a big enough carrot to 100%. Be involved with. So I can't see that the long-term benefits are too long-term and too much of a question to just go, yep, it's got to be in a big city, move it there.
Yeah, I'm with you on that 100%. I'm glad you said that, because, you know, they are still, in some people's eyes, the biggest football club in the world. You know, financially, they haven't had the success that Barca and Real Madrid have had, specifically Real Madrid in recent years, but they are an enormous pull. And if you're, you know, Charlesworth and Millercamp at the Mariners, any tie with Manchester United is a good thing, because it's Manchester United. You know, this is the sort of thing that probably doesn't come along again with any big club. You know, it's not as if like Juventus are sniffing around the Wanderers, or you know, it's not like that happens every day and every week. So to have that option and maybe that opportunity to work something out like that, and you're right, the sponsors, imagine if they're going to Joe Blogg's plumbing company in, you know, Sydney, who have got an enormous foothold in Sydney as the leading plumbers in the city. You're telling me that they don't want to be associated with Manchester United? Not a chance. Even if it means that they're sponsoring a team up on the Central Coast, they would jump at the opportunity. So, listen, we don't know if it's going to happen. As I said, I know that they have looked at Australia, but whether it happens, it's quite exciting, really. I think people did jump a bit too quickly, panicking that they were going to move the team to Tasmania or, you know, the Northern Territory or wherever it may be. But yeah, it's a good thing in my eyes.
Yeah, any investment done the right way is not a bad thing, because that's the model that the A-League is based on. I mean, you can hark back to romanticism and everything. I don't know where you draw the line at that given that the league is still so young, 15, 16 years old, and obviously Perth Glory is more established, and Adelaide United was established just before, and Newcastle have ties to their old clubs up there. But the point is that, yeah, I get the fact that people don't want foreign investment too much in the game, but that's football. It's a game played by the world. So why can't you have people involved from all around the world? And yeah, done the right way, it's the right thing. Done the wrong way, as we've seen previously, it doesn't matter if they're Australian, have an Australian passport or don't have an Australian passport, it's done the wrong way. So we'll wait and see what happens with that. But I am told that this was just more a flippant put it out there from Mike Charlesworth, because I'm really, really keen to sell it and drum up a bit of interest maybe from elsewhere, but certainly not down the path of Manchester United by any stretch of the imagination. The Matildas, what do we make of them?
Oh, how long have you got?
Well, you got a commitment in about half an hour's time, so it's up to you, really.
I think if I'm going to be honest, disappointing is too light a word to use. I think I was talking to Bozza about this yesterday. We were having a chat just randomly, about all things football, as we tend to do when he rings me and he's bored. And we said that one thing: if you watch a professional team in any league, if they ship a lot of goals the week prior, say, let's be honest, they conceded 5 against Germany. First thing that you make sure you do not do again is concede a bag load of goals again. So to go 1-0 down after 5 minutes, it happens. But then surely the priority has to be tighten up. Like, just establish some confidence amongst yourselves, because they're 3-0 down after, I think, 28 minutes.
Yeah.
And then the game is done. The game is done after 28 minutes. And the only things that are going to happen from then on in, realistically, are likely to be negative in terms of the confidence drains away from the team, in terms of the ideas that the players are trying to get used to from the new coach. Now, there were a couple of positives, but I think with international football, Adam, one thing that has always been, said to me by players that I've worked with and former pros that have all played international football, they've always said international football, you don't have enough time to implement detailed tactical systems, really like detailed styles of play, because you don't have the amount of time to bed those in. It's about managing the players that you've got, playing in their best positions, keeping the players that are in form. Now, I know they haven't been together for a very long period of time, 400 days we know since they last played a game of football, but it felt as though maybe Tony Gustafsson has tried to do a bit too much in too short period of time, and they looked a bit confused.
Yeah, if you didn't watch the matches, I watched every minute. Obviously, I was hosting the coverage. The combination play was non-existent. The appreciation of space ahead of the ball was rushed, and decision-making on the ball to play forward was out of kilter. There was no set way. I watched the whole 2 games, and I'm still not sure what exact style he wants to play, Tony Gustafsson. So I reckon the instructions for the Holland match were to play how we wanted to play against Germany, just try and do it better, but press them a bit higher. And it worked to a certain extent. We did create more chances, but we still left ourselves way too vulnerable, and we're too open. And we give the ball away, and all of a sudden the opposition, who are really good on the ball, the European sides have cut us apart in the past couple of years in this aspect. They just did it again, and it was too easy. They're miles away from the best. I reckon the best I've seen the Matildas was that Tournament of Champions that they won against USA, Brazil, and Japan. And that was a few years ago. That was under Stajic. And then it went to Milicic, obviously, and now it's with Gustafsson. But at least there, it wasn't your controlled tempo football, but it was a certain style, which was basically to allow people like Caitlin Ford, in particular Sam Kerr, to shine as much as they can. I don't know what exactly the method was under Gustafsson yet after seeing 180 minutes, and it is difficult. They did play like strangers, but I think, 400 days, you go, okay, they haven't played in 400 days, but then you go, well, hang on, most of them have been around each other for a very long time. They know each other's DNA, football DNA, so well. No Catley, no Carpenter. Lose your 2 standout starting fullbacks, and it doesn't help, and we got exposed in those areas. But I don't know what to think out of that, and I'm worried. I'm worried not only for the now, I'm worried about the future as well, because I can see these teams, especially from Europe, their technical ability is improving year on year, like substantially. And where are we going with our development of young players? I saw the W League Grand Final, and Kyra Cooney-Cross stood out for a very good reason. Technically, she's elite. She belongs in the European market right now, and hopefully she plays for the Matildas very soon. But depth-wise and what we're creating here for the future worries me, and the present worries me as well.
Do you know what I found interesting, Adam? Is and you mentioned that the European style is and the European teams are seemingly pulling away. The majority of the players in that team play in Europe. The coach is from Europe, so maybe that there is hope there that they've all had enough of an experience of playing at some of the biggest clubs in Europe, the players, and they can bring the ideas, and they can see what the coach will eventually want to implement, and they understand why. They could maybe marry those two elements. My biggest concern would be that I did see, and we've spoken about this before, about the way in which there maybe isn't as much. There's a reluctance to maybe criticise them.
The critical analysis is not the same as the men's game.
Yeah,
at the moment.
And I think, and I saw yesterday that straight away there were, but they haven't played in a long time. They've all been playing football. It's not as if any of them haven't actually played games of football, and this is their first physical matches they've played. They've all been playing minutes. They've all got minutes under their belts. But also, but the real focus has to be the World Cup. No, it doesn't. The focus has to be the Olympics. They tried so hard and got qualification secured for the Olympics. You're telling me that those players aren't thinking about the Olympics? They're going, it's not really the focus. The World Cup's the focus. It's a major tournament.
Yeah.
And that has to be, there's no way that Football Australia went to Tony Gustafson. So you got the Olympics. Don't really worry about that. This is what we're going to be judging you on. No way. Like if that has to be the in the forefront. And being honest, I know it's 2 games, and as you say, that you got to give them time, and you do absolutely. I'm a big advocate of giving people time to get things done, but that's a really, by anyone's standards, that's a woeful start.
Exactly. Yeah. About the critical analysis, it will be interesting the next 3 years, because leading up to the World Cup and including the World Cup, it will be a different sounding Australian football community, in the sense that, we have big expectations of this side. And we when I say critical analysis, it's not analysis to be critical and find fault with everything. It's to see it for what it is and call it out for what it is, not, there's all excuses. If that was the Socceroos, I remember sitting there the night we got beaten by Brazil, and then France put 6 past us. That was volcanic, that reaction. And Holger Osset got sacked before he got back to the hotel in Paris. Obviously, that's not going to happen here, fair enough. But what I'm saying is that the analysis will only heighten with the Matildas, and I just hope they're ready for it, in terms of not taking it to heart too much. The team and those involved with Australian women's football, of course we want success, and of course we'd love nothing more for them to succeed at the highest level. But with that, there comes we care about it so much, we're going to speak our mind about it. And
it's a compliment. It's actually a compliment, that the fact that people are taking such because it's in depth, isn't it? That's what it is. It's in depth analysis, and you're looking at them. You're judging them because you care about them, because they've been so successful, and they're going to have to get used to it. With
the lead up now, I mean, the talking to Georgie Omandale and Michelle Heyman, who are part of the coverage, they haven't heard anything about a local camp for W League players to keep ticking over. They're all going back to play in the local NPL, which will help them, but they need to have camps. If they want to be at a level where they're potentially going to have local players, Kyra Cooney-Cross, Angie Beard, Tamika Yallop, Georgia, maybe Michelle, for instance, a couple of names as the phone rings. Is that Tony Gustafsson to complain about our coverage? No, they need to be open, and they need to set these camps up now, because these players, that they're not all just professional players waiting for a phone call to say come into camp. They've got lives, they've got uni, they've got work. They need 2 weeks notice. That's the rule. They need 2 weeks notice to sort themselves out. Sometimes that's not given, but a bit of clarity about how they're going to prepare this team would be great. It's difficult, I know, and they're probably going to have another camp over in Europe, but they need to get something here, because they need depth from Australia, not only from just the players that are overseas, because it's not going to be enough.
No, it's not. And I think it's, what do you think that does for those players the mentality of those who are, as it stands, there's been no mention of a camp. What do you think that does for them in terms of their aspirations for thinking they then can't catch the eye of the coaching staff?
Oh, it's disheartening. I mean, sure, it would be motivational in a sense, but the underlying emotion, I'd say, would be disenchantment. There's 2 Australian teams. There's an Australian team that's based overseas, and they're going to get the preferential treatment as opposed to us. I'm sure that's not the object. That's not what they want, Football Australia. But that's how it is looking at the moment, the way it's going. Unless they sort something out here, might be jumping the gun. There might be plans put in place, and in a couple of days' time we'll hear about it. I hope so, but I'm just saying it how it is at the moment because that's how the players feel. I sat next to 2 of them on the weekend, so yeah, it's difficult. Hopefully they sort it out, because it's one thing to just have the World Cup and go, yeah, that's going to be brilliant. That's going to solve a lot of problems for Australian football. But you've got to give the team every single chance. I'll go back to the Olympics. The Australian, when we hosted the Olympics in 2000, we got the Olympics great, and then they did it the right way. The sports involved, they pumped money into development. They made sure that all the athletes were ready to perform at their highest. And they made sure that, okay, we're not just going to host the Olympics and have a good time. We're going to actually succeed. And we had our best ever medal haul at an Olympics at the time there in 2000 because we prepared the team the right way. And hopefully a lot of resources is pumped into not only the women's side of things, but the men's side of things for the World Cups and Olympics coming forward as well. Fingers crossed. And that's all we can do at the moment. Fingers crossed.
Absolutely. And, I was at the, if we're going to talk about some positives, I was at the launch of the sponsorship announcement, the Commonwealth Bank on Tuesday, I think it was. And, that's brilliant. That's such a positive. And that goes to show, if we go back to sort of round it off, we mentioned about, having this attention on them now as an entity. The Matildas, realistically, they're probably the most popular national team in Australia. I'd say up there alongside with the women's cricket team.
Yep.
And that's
they're an easy sell.
Yeah. There's so many good things. There's so many good things that are about them at the moment. But it has to get to the stage where those performances are going to be expected now.
Yeah, get it right on the pitch, and the rest of it takes care of itself, as we've seen. So, yeah, fingers crossed that a difficult 12 months can manifest itself into a better next 4 months ahead of the Olympics. Champions League review. Just quickly, Asian Champions League, before we move on, before we get to the European Champions League. Difficult landscape to negotiate for the 3 Australian clubs potentially involved. Sydney definitely will be in the group stage. Brisbane and Melbourne City need to qualify. I think Melbourne City, they're through to the next stage already because of the coup in Myanmar. I think they were meant to play a team from Myanmar. I think I got that right. And Brisbane have to play their playoff. They're looking at pushing it back until post-grand final. We're looking at a June 20 grand final. And at the moment, the AFC have got those playoffs slated for June 21. That might be a bit difficult if 1 or 2 of those sides are involved in the showpiece. So they're trying to push that back a week, and then they'll have the group stage in a hub. You're hearing, James, Singapore?
Thailand. Yeah, Thailand or Singapore is what I'm hearing at the moment. Nothing. That's where the 2 candidates are, if you like, the 2 contenders to be hosting it. But, in all honesty, I don't know an awful lot about the football infrastructure of Singapore, whether there would be things being played out of 1 or 2 stadiums. Probably the guess is they've definitely got more than enough hotels and high quality hotels in Singapore to host everyone. But, it's just another one of those, like we've saw with the World Cup qualifiers. It's just another one of those unknowns that has to kind of just bubble along in the background before the clubs then get told, this is what you're doing. You've got to do it. Yeah. Sydney FC are obviously in a better position because they're, time sensitive. They're not as time sensitive as potentially as Melbourne City are. But yeah, that's where we're at the moment. As far as I know, I'm still trying to find out a bit more, but Thailand or Singapore are the likely 2 hub destinations.
You probably prefer, for an adventure, Thailand, to keep your mind on the job. Singapore, I don't know if you've been to Singapore. It doesn't look like it.
Yeah, been to both.
Yeah? Where would you rather go?
Thailand. I went to the west coast of Thailand, did some island hopping up the west coast. It's beautiful. Singapore is very expat heavy. It's like if any of those are listening who've been to Canary Wharf, that area in London, it's like that. Singapore is like that. It's all very centralized. It's located around all the big banks and the shiny new glass skyscrapers, that sort of thing. Lovely place. Beer's flipping expensive, but hopefully the players won't be thinking about that.
Don't you get put in jail for littering in Singapore?
Yeah. It is the cleanest place I've ever been in my life.
Oh, really? Okay. Fair enough. European Champions League. What'd you make of it? Who did we get it right? What did I say? I said Liverpool were going to come back and get through, didn't I? So,
yeah. And you said Dortmund as well.
And I said Dortmund. Oh, it was nearly right. 10 I was right, and then Kevin De Bruyne just decided to take over. Is it just me? This is a weird point because I saw how hard Kevin De Bruyne hit the post, and I saw how hard Erling Haaland kicked the ball. The Champions League ball looks like a size 4.
Do you know what it reminds me of? Do you remember there was a weird tangent, but the Champions League game last season, and it was Dortmund PSG, and it was Erling Haaland spanked one from probably 25 yards out.
Yeah,
and it hit the back of, and this was when there were still fans in the stadium.
Yeah,
when he spanked that ball so hard, you heard the net rattle.
Yeah,
you heard that chain link noise.
Yeah.
Amongst the whole stadium full of people, and like it's weird you say that because he's such a monster of a. Still feels like a boy, Erling Haaland. If you look at his age, never mind how old he is, but seeing that, and then as you say, De Bruyne this morning, that was a brilliant game. If we start with that one, Kevin De Bruyne. I mean, I don't think there's any question that he's the best midfielder in world football. Kevin De Bruyne at the moment. He's just, what I liked about him this morning was not just the range of passing, not the technique, but the tenacity that he has, the fight. A lot of people still think that Kevin De Bruyne is mid-20s and a bit of a baby face. Kevin De Bruyne he's got some stature and size about him as well. He's physical. He put some challenges in. I remember listening to Kevin De Bruyne interview a while back, and he was asked about his favourite position or what he sees himself as. He sees himself as a central midfielder, as an out-and-out central midfielder, not as like a number 10 or as someone who drifts in from out wide. And, he was so good this morning. And it was actually interesting because there was that period, Jude Bellingham, 17 years old, scoring, he's what a future he's got, by the way, putting that goal to put them, Dortmund through on the night, if you like. And then from then on, we've seen Manchester City in quarterfinals over the last few years struggle and panic a bit. And they didn't do that this morning. They rode their luck a little bit, but yeah, Manchester City going through. I think I said this to you last week. I still think this is their year. And I think they will win the Champions League this year. I've just got something about them. I think with Ruben Diaz at the back and, players like Joao Cancelo and Mahrez and Foden coming into the mix. I just feel as though they're different this season. They've got a bit more nous and they've got a bit better game management about them. That was a great game. And Liverpool, Real Madrid, that one is one that we mentioned about there not being a crowd at Anfield and having those famous Anfield nights. And I think that really affected them this morning.
Well, but it was the old story for Liverpool this season, creating chances, not taking them. They take one of those glut of chances that they had in the first half, totally different situation. And in the end, it's cost them everything this season, not taking chances. So I don't know how Jurgen Klopp rejuvenates or finds solutions with the players he's got there. Would you, sitting here right now, would you say that Firmino, Mane and Salah will all be there next season?
No, I don't think. I would have maybe said 2 of them won't be there, but I think it will be Salah or Firmino that will go, and I think it might well be Mohamed Salah. Just because there's been a lot of noise. You haven't heard anything out of Sadio Mane and Roberto Firmino. You haven't heard any noises from their camps, whereas the Salah camp has been causing ruckus. If that's a good word to use. The contract leaks and his futures. When you hear someone goes, "Oh, don't know, we'll see what the future holds." That's like flirting. It's basically flirting with another club, his agent, his management going, you know what, let's see if we can either get loads more money out of Liverpool, or let's tempt Paris Saint-Germain, or let's tempt Real Madrid into coming in for us. Because, you know, Real Madrid and Barca are the two teams that every player wants to go and play for realistically.
It's like it's like you're texting a girl and out of nowhere you're just talking about what you're watching on TV, and then all of a sudden you go, "Oh, my parents aren't home."
Then the ... That's basically it. Mohamed Salah is telling Real Madrid that his parents aren't home. That's what he's doing, you know. And I think I wonder whether or not it might be the right thing as well. They'd command an enormous fee for him.
Is it another Eden Hazard waiting to happen?
Whether they can get him out and reinvest, because they proved in the summer that they could do that. I mean, look at the signing of Diogo Jota. He's been a fantastic signing. Had he not been injured for that, 6 weeks, I think he missed midway through the season when they had that slump, I think Liverpool would be in a much better position than they currently are. So maybe it is the right thing that they do try and cash in on him. And you never know, the big player they've been linked with, Kylian Mbappe. So whether Liverpool could maybe tempt him to come there.
With Real Madrid, they got a new stadium opening as well. And Florentino Perez, I watched that Classico over the last couple of days when my back's been bad. Classico, Galacticos, the documentary. And it was basically Florentino on an ego trip to make them a marketing company and not a football club back in the early 2000s. Have we got a hint that he's going to try this again now that Ronaldo has certainly moved on and they're going into a brand new stadium and they want to push home the fact that they are the biggest club in the world commercially?
There's every chance. You know, they've had when it's done, the Bernabeu is going to look like spectacular when it is finished and the renovations have all been done. And, you know, if you look at them in two aspects, this year, they haven't been anywhere near vintage Real Madrid. But look where they are. You know, they've just beaten Liverpool over 2 legs in the semi-finals of Champions League. They won the Classico. At the moment, I know Atleti are a point clear, but Real Madrid are probably favourites to win La Liga, which, you know, 3 weeks ago, I think they were 7 or 8 points off the top. So they've got this thing about them that they can take it up a gear when they really need to. Every time Zinedine Zidane is under pressure, they win a glut of like 3 or 4 games in a row, and then they just go. So if they can put themselves in a position where when that opens up, they can reinvest in the squad and, you know, bring in Erling Haaland, for example, there's every chance. I mean, the Florentino Perez thing is brilliant because whatever he wants to do, he'll do. He rewrote the essentially the charter of Real Madrid about being president. So essentially, only Florentino Perez can be president of Real Madrid. That's how mad it is. It's not like the elections at Barcelona. You have to run as like you have to be able to cover all the bases in terms of a financial aspect. So you have to be mega rich for one, which Florentino Perez is. And essentially it's all but written in their charter. You can only become president of Real Madrid if your name is Florentino Perez.
Florentino Putin.
Yeah.
A lot of similarities. Hey, so the semi-finals, Real Madrid and Chelsea, and Chelsea were very good defensively against Porto. They sucked the life out of that second leg, and that's exactly what Tommy Tuchel wanted, even though that ridiculous goal at the end there, and you got something on bicycle kicks. But the other semi-final will be the geopolitical Classico between PSG and Manchester City, one for the romantics, as you've noticed on your Twitter feed a lot this morning.
It's so annoying. I understand it. Everybody understands. Yeah, they're owned by states. Qatar against the UAE. You know, it's fine. But just enjoy the football. You know, we've just watched over 2 legs in the quarters, Bayern against PSG, which was like phenomenal. When you watch a game of football, you go, I don't want this to end. I just want them to keep playing. Like, those 2 games of football were phenomenal. And there wasn't a single mention in there of, oh, yeah, but PSG are owned by Qatar. Yeah, well, we know that. They've been owned by Qatar for ages. But it still doesn't ruin the enjoyment of watching Neymar and Kylian Mbappe run rings around people every week. It's great. Yeah. And you're going to get to see Manchester City, who are equally as good a football team, have a better coach in Pep Guardiola, Kevin De Bruyne, Phil Foden. You've got these players like this coming up against Neymar and Mbappe, and it's going to be brilliant. Just enjoy it. We know that it's not ideal. We know that the money is very questionable, and so are the ways in which those places are run. But come on, just enjoy the football. If you don't like it, go and watch League Two, and
you can. But that's the thing, you can enjoy. I get as much enjoyment about watching that as I would, and I wasn't there the other night, but Manly United played an FFA Cup game against Arncliffe, and Arncliffe, just a local park football side, basically, and they tried to make it as good a night as possible, but they wanted to win. So basically they had one ball, and every time the ball went out to try and stop the rhythm of the game, not only would they kick it out, they'd try and kick it 3 streets away. So just waste as much time and things like that. That's as enjoyable in a perverse kind of way or an odd kind of way, and it's a big meaning of a FFA Cup game as the absolute elite and Kylian Mbappe running rings around Bayern Munich defenders. And yeah, you don't think geopolitics. I wonder how this is going to play out with the United Nations when you're watching Thomas Muller trying to drift into space and pick apart the Qatari-owned PSG. So yeah, it should be a great game of football, 2 legs of football, these semi-finals between these 2 clubs. If you can tell yourself to put aside the fact that, who they're owned by, and if you don't agree with that, whatever, it's football, and that's what it is.
A great mention of lower level shithousery as well, having one ball. It's brilliant. It reminds me, do you remember the one the other day with the Ajax ball boy who lobbed the ball straight at the player in the chops?
So good. So good. Bicycle kicks.
Yes. So
bicycle kicks.
Mehdi Taremi, that unbelievable, glorious bicycle kick, like technique level, I'd say it's close to a 10.
Yeah.
Coming it was almost any further round, and I think it would have been maybe a scissor kick. It was going down, but I was looking at some of the best ever Champions League bicycle kicks the other day, and I came up with 4.
Down the rabbit hole, were you?
Yeah, I done another YouTube rabbit hole, and I wasn't even on my day off. I was actually working as well. It's terrible.
Well done.
So I came up with Mehdi Taremi against Porto.
Yep.
Against Chelsea. Cristiano Ronaldo for Real Madrid against Juventus, where he is about 15 foot in the air.
That was remarkable. Yep.
Remarkable. I came up with Mario Mandzukic in the Champions League final, Juve against Real Madrid.
Yep.
And I came up with Gareth Bale against Liverpool in the Champions League final. If you had to pick one of those 4, where would you go?
Ronaldo. Just because he basically nearly went out of the stratosphere. It was incredible. I mean, Gareth Bale, amazing, notwithstanding the fact that his coach put him on, and I don't know how he got on, but he changed the game for them, basically, because Zinedine Zidane, obviously not a big fan of Gareth Bale, we're led to believe, and he basically won him the game, and that helped. I mean, Loris Karius helped as well later in the game, but the Ronaldo one, the Mario one, Mandzukic was fantastic, but the Ronaldo one for me, even though that one the other day was superb. They're all great. You'd all take them, but the Ronaldo one for me. You?
Bale. I think Gareth Bale, just because it was the final and
he's British.
Well, but he plays for Tottenham, so there's that bit that counts against him.
True. Good point.
But I just think, so there was two things. To watch Zinedine Zidane just wave his hands around and go, "Oh my God!" But part of me thinks Zidane going, "You bastard, you've just scored the best ever Champions League goal that I used to have. You've taken my shine." That was awesome. And do you know what? I watched the Ronaldo one again, and all the stills and the slow-mos of him being that high. He was above head height.
Yeah.
He's essentially laying down above head height in the air when he connects with it. And then the whole of the Allianz Stadium in Turin applauds him. And he runs over. He's about to do that weird jump Sue celebration that he does. And then he actually kind of doesn't do it. He pulls out of it, and then he just stands there and soaks it all up because they're just applauding him.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Absolutely. Before we go, just news through from the E-League as well. That Nivea Men are sponsoring the E-League this season. This is the one where they all sit around and play FIFA. But it's going to be the Nivea Men E-League. If there's one thing I think of when I see gamers doing what they're doing, it's exfoliation.
Yeah. They're going to be... Yes, just stop eating sweets.
Yeah, Yeah, those munchies are going to taste a bit different with a bit of moisturiser on your hand or whatever like that. But no, it's good news. I mean, and that's another big company wanting to be involved in football, so it's not a bad thing. But it made me think, and you'd be better versed on this, Dodsy. I've seen some interesting sponsorships in my time. Poo Jeans sponsoring AC Milan, Beanie Boos or whatever they were, sponsoring Portsmouth back in the day, or the company that owned
the TY, the red love heart on the shirt. And
yeah.
Is it? Yeah.
Have you got any others that kind of you looked at and you went, "Ooh, that's a bit odd"?
Yeah. So I've got 3. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to do them in reverse order.
Go.
So number 3 was Ideal Boilers, right?
What?
Ideal Boilers, as in like, you know, the gas boiler in your kitchen.
Yeah.
They sponsored West Brom. So
Yeah.
Ideal Boilers, that's fine, you know, local company. The flipping mascot was a boiler. The bloke running around in not just like a boiler suit, you know, like you'd have in your overalls. He was an actual hot water boiler, like with arms and legs sticking out, and he was running around on the sideline. It was ridiculous. If you Google it, I'll put some pictures up on my Twitter later when we send this out. So that was number 3. Number 2 was Getafe in La Liga. Many moons ago, was sponsored by Burger King.
Yeah.
So Burger King on the big badge on the front of their shirt.
Yeah. When
a player scored, they used to pull their shirt over the head, and there was the face of the Burger King underneath, and their face was there, and it was so good. But number 1, drum rolls, there was a university team in England. They were called the Rutherford Raiders. Right now, I remember this made news at the time. They played for Kent University. They put Pornhub on the front of their T-shirts, right? So, and they made it up themselves. That notorious website then got in touch with them, said, "Yeah, all right, we'll sponsor you," and the university banned it.
Wonder why. Well, there's something there for everyone, so
it's diverse.
It's inclusion.
So yeah, that was the one that I always remember when that came out. It was one of those stories that just did the rounds and made so many headlines.
And the people who came up with it would have just been the kings or if not queens of the university campus for a few days as well. On that beautiful note of the highest order, James Bond, thank you for your company this week, and look forward to it next week, and we'll chat some more football.
Pleasure as always, mate. Looking forward to the football.
Thanks for your company on the Fox Football Podcast. We'll catch you next week. Enjoy the football over the weekend.